Okay, we're going to talk now about feedback. And feedback is one of my favorite topics because feedback can make a big difference in the way that we build relationships and we work with people. So the first question when we talk about feedback is, why do you think it's difficult to give people feedback? What is the challenge? What do you think? Yes?
I think that for me personally, I don't like confrontation,
Yes.
so I don't want them to get defensive in my feedback.
So many times we don't want to give feedback because it can be uncomfortable in people getting defensive or upset with us.
Yes.
Or maybe we think that if we give them feedback, then it's going to be retaliation.
Right.
So we better don't say anything, so maybe there will be not a negative consequence. Now, most of the time, what you just shared is what happened to us. We think if we give this information, instead of being helpful in this situation, can be even worse. But the truth is that feedback is a gift. Feedback is a gift because when we have this information, we can do something about it. If we are not telling people what they are doing well or what they need to do better, they are going to keep doing things that maybe are not the most effective. Or they will not know what makes them successful. So I want to share with you a model about how to give feedback that can be helpful for you. Because in the coaching work, many times feedback is an important part of the conversation. So feedback is one of the tools that you can use to work more effectively with people. And when you are coaching, many times by giving feedback, people can get information that helps them to be more effective. Now, many times we want people to keep doing what they are doing. Sometimes we want them to do things differently. Sometimes we want them to stop doing that they are doing. Or sometimes we want them to start doing something that they are not doing. So there are different possibilities. So I want to share with you a model that we can apply that can be, in any of these situations, can be used with a different focus. So in this model of feedback, the first step is the model is called BEST. And I like the model because it's easy to remember. You know, when these models are too complicated with too many letters and you don't remember anything. But BEST is easy to remember. And the BEST, the first letter is B, and B is for behaviors. So when we're giving feedback, we want to focus on behaviors. What are people doing, or what are people saying? And the more specific, the better. The more specific we are with the behavior, the better. For example, if I tell you, when you came late to the meeting yesterday and you were 15 minutes late, and last week you came 20 minutes late to the meeting, and the week before you were late 20 minutes, I am giving specific, concrete data of things that happened. And it's very different to say when you were 10 minutes late in these 3 occasions when you say you're always late. Can you see the difference?
Yes.
So the more specific you are when you're giving feedback, the most effective. So when you want to give feedback to reinforce behaviors, or when you want to give feedback to change behaviors, you want to think very specifically what is what the person has said or done. Concrete, specific, objective. And a way, a test to pass would be that if a few people were there, they would all agree that that happened. And it's different, the behavior, than an interpretation of the behavior. For example, when I said, when we were in the meeting and you raised your voice and you left the room and you closed the door with a very strongly, it's very different to say when you were angry. Can you see the difference?
Yes.
One thing is a specific thing that the person has done, and the other thing is the interpretation of the behaviors. So when we're giving feedback, we want to focus on the behaviors and not on the interpretations of the behaviors. Can you see the difference?
This is a fantastic crossover between professional and personal, correct?
Yeah.
Because when you're fighting with your partner...
Yes. Yeah. You always do that. You always... Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. You can definitely use that in your personal life too. And the most specific, there is not, you know, like when somebody has said something or done something different that we come up with interpretations. Okay, So that's the first step. That's the first step. The second part is talking about what are the consequences or the effects of these behaviors. What is your reaction that you have about these behaviors? For example, we can say, when you came yesterday 10 minutes late to the meeting, and the week before 15 minutes late, and last week 10 minutes late on Wednesday, the effect is people are wondering that you maybe are not as committed to working with them, or this team is not as important as other responsibilities that you have. So maybe that is not your intention, but the message that you are giving by these behaviors is this. Now, feedback should be a dialogue, not a monologue. Most of the time, we think about giving feedback like a monologue, like giving a message. The idea is to switch the way that we look at feedback, and feedback is much more effective when it's a conversation and it's a dialogue. And there is a possibility that there is a piece of information that we don't know or we don't have that will make us maybe look at the situation in a different angle when we get them. So if we see feedback as a dialogue, we really want to have in our first step solicit input. So stop. And the way that helps me is I visualize like a stop sign. So after I have talked about the behavior, and after I have talked about the effect of the behavior in me or my team or other people, I visualize this stop sign, and I want at that moment and at that time to stop and listen. Very important to spend time listening what are the other person's reaction or behavior or ideas, and then with that information we can go to the last step that is very important and many people forget it. You are giving feedback because you want a different behavior. You are giving feedback because maybe you want to reinforce the behavior. For example, if you said, and this is a question that I love and many people don't ask, what makes you so successful? Great results. What do you think that makes you so successful? We always ask when things are not working, but when things are working and are great, many times we miss opportunities to ask, congratulations, this is a great accomplishment. What made you so successful? So with that question, we can start identifying things like, for example, the person finished the task on time, spend time planning and thinking possible obstacles. Whatever the person come up, what are the consequences of these behaviors? That people keep engaged, inspired, you make us feel a great team, that make look at the organization as a very effective in the community, all of these consequences. What do you think about that? So we open a space for the person to talk about their own reactions about that, and then probably the next step is for you to keep doing more of the same, because that's great. Now, giving positive reinforcement is one of the things that most managers, it doesn't matter what kind of organization, people don't do it. It seems that we are more effective about looking at what is not working, and we don't spend enough time looking at what is working. So I want to invite you, when you go back to your team, spend a few minutes reinforcing what is working. Remind people, ask them, so you keep doing what is working. Now, when we want things to be different, it's important that there is clarity about what are going to be the next steps. My experience is applying this model many times when people practice these models, and we're going to do this more practice now about the best model, is that people forget the last step. And the last step, let me tell you, is the most important one. Because if you don't have clarity about what are going to be the next steps as a result of the conversation stays in the air. Can you see that? Have you seen that in the past, that you have been giving feedback to somebody and nothing changed? Because the last step was not clear. So when you're giving feedback and you're telling somebody that something that they are doing has negative consequences to people around them, and then they tell you what was in their way or what were the obstacles, and then you agree about the last steps, it's very important to follow up. And to say, okay, if you agree to come on time for the next meeting, what is your commitment? My commitment is that I'm going to be doing that. So sometimes it's asking also, what can be in the way for you to do that? You know, what could be in the way? So have a conversation about that and see how you can be sure that you have clarity and a discussion about what can be in the way to accomplish what needs to be accomplished. So there are more possibilities that will happen. So let's do a brief practice with somebody next to you, and I want you to practice using this model. And let's imagine that you have to give feedback to somebody in your team, reinforcing feedback, something that you want them to keep doing or something that you wanted them to do differently. And you would tell your colleague to play for 2 minutes, that person. And then you will have like a 5-minute, very short conversation using the best model.